Happy opening day, you beautiful people.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Thursday, March 30th, 2023. It is opening day. Happy opening day, everybody. I am so unbelievably excited to talk about the 2023 Detroit Tigers today. We're going to do a full season preview. That's pretty much what today's going to be about. It's opening day. Everybody's talking about expectations for the year, officially lock in predictions, I guess expectations, I'm going to say again, and what's going to happen to your Detroit Tigers in the year 2023. Well, let's talk about it. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. All righty. I guess let's just get right into it. Okay. I'm so excited. It finally is here. And we're in a dome. I know Tropicana, everybody likes to, crap all over Tropicana and it's an awful park and whatever. At least it's guaranteed the game is being played. No rain and nonsense is going to stop this train. We're playing ball today. And I love it. Good ball club. Good ball club. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. Let's get into season expectations, though. This is the official season preview. We've gone through the spring, everything, this offseason, spring training, etc., all behind us. All we have is hope. Everybody's at 0-0. What's going to happen to the club this year? Well, my official lock it in, right? They used to do on Deal or No Deal. You either close the box and you lock in or you press the button. I'm locking in a 74-88 record for your Detroit Tigers this season. I've said it a million times. I think last year, everything that could have possibly gone wrong for the Tigers did. And honestly, I don't believe it's possible for us to have as much bad luck as we did last year. I genuinely don't think it's possible. Now, I say that, I'm going to knock on wood, right? I say that, and then they're going to go out this year and it's going to somehow be worse. But genuinely, that is my, and based on the predictions I saw today, we threw a tweet out there and asked everybody to respond with theirs. Most people had high 60s, low 70s win total. Most people were around 70, give or take 2 wins. So I'm a little bit on the optimistic side, but not by too terribly much based on, again, what I saw today online. But that's still all were better than last year. All were improvements, even if just by a couple of games. All the predictions I saw were improvements from last season. And I think that everyone the extent of it is debated, but everyone somewhat understands that last year was somewhat of an anomaly in how ridiculously unlucky and just awful it ended up being. So on the low end, I love to do when talking about predictions ceilings and floors, right? That's my big thing. I love to give a range of what is possible, and not quite in the middle, but somewhere in the middle-ish is going to be my 74-88 prediction. But if we're talking about worst case scenario for your Detroit Tigers last year, again, I really think last year was kind of it. You have to realize how much went wrong last year and then realize that they still they didn't even lose 100 games. I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, I guess, saying it out loud, but given how much did go wrong last year, I'm shocked that they didn't. And they went on a little bit of a heater there in September for sure to kind of save it. But a 66-96 record last year with everything that happened, I think that the worst case scenario is around that. I don't foresee a season in which too much more could have possibly gone wrong for a baseball team. So that's going to be around my low, maybe a couple more wins or less, I guess I should say. Maybe that like 64 range, just because like we don't have as good of a bullpen this year as we did last year. But like I find it hard to believe that, some people are like, this is going to be the worst team we've ever seen in our lives. Unless you're less than 4 years old, that's not happening. Like, this is not going to be the 2019 Tigers. And it's certainly, for those who are a little bit older, like myself and older, that remember the '03 team, it's certainly not going to be that bad. Okay. So, like, let's pump the brakes on the pessimism a little bit in that regard. But I truly, I don't see it getting much worse than last year. It would have to be a lot more injuries. It would have to be a lot of dudes that last year you looked at and went, wow, they had the worst year of their careers, repeating that and them just being those caliber of players. And then all of your top prospects you called up and had expectations for either being hurt or being busts, because we didn't get any production out of any of them last year. I don't see all of those three things happening again for the second year in a row. And so if that does happen, we're going to be looking back in October and going, well, it happened again. This is just what we are, I guess. And 2022 wasn't a fluke because it happened again. We're going to have to truly enter rebuild 2.0 and just start selling off any piece of value and give up on these prospects and whatnot. On the flip side, let's talk about best case scenario. I think the best case scenario for this team would be about a 500 record. And I know that that's, again, not like the most exciting thing to hear. Like, oh, the best possible case scenario for your baseball team is like an 80-win season. But that's where I think we are. And I also think that if the Tigers win 80 games, this fan base's tune is going to change dramatically. We're going to go from, oh my goodness, what a train wreck. Look what Avila left us. This is awful. This was one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. People are like quitting on the team and blah, blah, blah. And like all these narratives that came out of 2022 are going to disappear like that. And again, this is best case scenario. I don't think this is going to happen. These are both ends of the bell curve, right? So I think that would fix all of the super pessimism that's out there. And we do have to remember that 2021, they were 4 wins away from a 500 record, right? They won 77 games just in 2021. And so I don't think it's this impossible feat, which is why I have it. Like, my best case scenario, I'm not going to say like win the World Series, duh. Like, this is my obtainably best case scenario, I guess I'll say. And so you would need what? Like Javi to turn back into a 4-win player. You need Austin Meadows to turn into all-star Austin Meadows, which he has been before. Like, these are all obtainable things that have happened before, right? Erod pitches a full healthy season is simply just what we are paying him and expect him to be, which is not an ace, but like a 3.7 to 3.9 ERA pitch to weak contact guy that's going to play well in a no home runs ballpark, right? Matt Manning takes a huge step forward. That's one where like we haven't seen it yet. That's like the only one I've listed so far that would have to be proven wrong for some people, right? Joey Wentz ends up maybe being legit. Nick Maton and Matt Vierling, all they really needed was playing time, and they both turn into really solid major leaguers. Riley Green is what we expect him to be. Spencer Torkelson is what everyone expected him to be on draft night. Everything clicks, and they not only prove that last year was a fluke, but they then jump ahead of schedule on top of that. That's like best case scenario. Okay? Now, let's go back. Yeah, all roads point back to my, where does the truth lies? Probably somewhere in the middle most times, right? So let's talk about that 74 and 88 record, why I think it's obtainable, why my kind of mark is right there. And then we're going to spend the rest of the episode pretty much talking about the reasons to watch this baseball team in 2023, because I actually think there's quite a lot. Okay? But first, we got to talk about FanDuel. The tournament's heating up. We're well aware. We're into Final Four season, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up today and claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line, point spreads, which team will be cutting down the net, etc. It's all on an app that's safe, it's secure, it's super easy to use. So don't miss out on your chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, everybody. Welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. So before the break, I appreciate y'all. I'm so happy. I'm so unbelievably happy that it is baseball season again. Like truly, I can't put into words how much I love baseball season, how much I love watching the Detroit Tigers every single day. I'm so unbelievably pumped. And I'm glad that we're going to be going through this season together as we have, well, with me for the last, this will be my second full season, third season total as host of this show. So pretty pumped. Okay. Let's talk about this team. Like I said, I have us around 74 and 88. I do think it's obtainable. And the biggest thing I'm looking for is to just re-inject some optimism into this fan base. Truly. Like that's, and like the front office, obviously, as well. That'd be great. But I really want the general vibe and my opinion of this team to be after game 162. You know what? 2022 was a fluke, and this team is headed in the right direction with some pieces to build around. I'm not expecting a playoff team, obviously, as I think I've made abundantly clear, but I am expecting to have real confidence and a firm idea of who is going to be a part of the next Tigers playoff team. And ideally, that number is large enough to inspire some hope into some people. Okay? So let's just talk about what to watch for this season. Okay? I think this is a much more fascinating and entertaining, not only conversation, but product than a lot of people realize. Okay. And this is the most important conversation, I think, because we're all pretty well aware that the answer to the question of what to watch for the Detroit Tigers this year is not going to be a World Series. I think we're all rather clear. Maybe there's some, don't tell me that until after opening day, people. I respect the heck out of it. Okay. Have all the optimism in the world for one day. I love it. But I think we're all pretty well aware of that fact. So why are you watching? What are you looking for? I think it's a rather long list, like I said, which kind of is what makes this team surprisingly entertaining, even though they have a presumed low win total. First off is going to be Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson. Both had underwhelming rookie campaigns, but even then, they aren't really truly comparable because Riley Green at least showed flashes of why he was so highly touted. And this season, no injuries, a full spring training. I think a lot of people, including myself, are extremely excited to see what Riley Green can do this season. I want him to take a huge step forward. Like the greedy part of me wants him to be like a 4.5, 5-win player. But I think a successful year for me for Riley Green is like if he's a really solid regular in center that plays a solid center field. Like if he's that 2.5 to 3, maybe even a little bit higher win player as far as WAR goes at the end of the season, I'm going to take that as a massive victory. And I again, good defense, all that. The offensive numbers can look the same except for more power, less ground balls, more line drives. If it's just that switch and a good defensive center field, I think you're going to see a very, very productive season out of Riley Green this year. Also, Torkelson, right, the opposite end, it's a little bit different because he really didn't give us anything positive to take away. And I'm not trying to be like overly dramatic or like be super critical, but that's kind of the truth. His timing was pretty brutal. He was a -1 WAR, and on some websites even more than -1 WAR, depending on which WAR you use, and got demoted at one point. This is a 1-1 pick. And so a lot of people soured on Torkelson really, really quickly. I'm looking for him to build on his great spring, which he, I think, objectively had, and hit the ball consistently hard. Like if he reaches like a 20 home run total, that's going to please a lot of people, obviously. But I'm really just looking for him to still walk a solid amount, but just hit the ball consistently hard. The results will follow over the course of 162 rather, if he does that. And if he's even respectable in like the batting average department, paired with the walk rate and the hard hit rate, I think you're going to see a really solid season, and one that he can build upon and go, okay, now that's the floor. Now I'm going to raise that floor again and have an even better year in 2024 and going forward. Okay. Spencer Turnbull. This is another big reason for me to watch. I think it should be a big reason for you to watch as well. He's the truth. Okay. I love Spencer Turnbull on the mound, man. I love the way he pitches. And he's been hurt for a really long time. And this instantly becomes a very important season for Turnbull in terms of proving his worth to this front office and fan base about his future role on the team. I think Spencer Turnbull has the ability to be one of the best pitchers in this rotation, if not the best pitcher, dare I say, in this rotation. But this season is a huge prove it year, given how long it's been since we've seen him on the bump. And yes, keep your ERA down, obviously, right? But really keep the walk numbers down. And he has nasty enough stuff where the results are going to follow. So that's my biggest thing. Stay healthy, first and foremost. And I mean first and foremost. But after that, keep the walk numbers down, and I think the rest will follow for Spencer Turnbull. Okay? Just reprove to everybody that you're going to be in this rotation for the next 2 to 4 years at minimum. Okay? Jake Rogers, a big one. Okay? They have, well, they as in the catcher duo, but specifically Jake Rogers, has the chance to cement himself as a long-term catching option for this baseball team. If Rogers hits well, it's super possible that he passes Haas on the depth chart like sooner rather than later. That could happen. Like, I'm not even kidding, by like May. That's how good he is defensively. That's how good of a receiver he is. That's how good he has been working with the pitching staff already and pre-injury, obviously. And in the minors, that was all anybody talked about. He has a cannon for an arm that we're already seeing. Like, it doesn't look like he's really lost a touch even though he had Tommy John. If he even hits decently well, I think it is not only possible, but I would say likely that he's going to start more games at catcher than anybody else on this baseball team, Eric Haas included. Now, Eric Haas, if he keeps hitting, is going to keep finding his way into the lineup. It's just not going to be at catcher. They'll DH him. They'll throw him in left. They're going to figure out a way to make sure the what they believe is the 9 best hitters on this team are in the lineup every night, because Lord knows after last season, they're not going to let someone who's hitting really well not play. Okay? So that's a really intriguing storyline to me, is Jake Rogers. The Miguel Cabrera farewell tour, also another one. That's fairly obvious. From casual fan to diehard, it doesn't really matter. This is going to continue to be one of the biggest storylines of the Detroit Tiger season. And in a national media perspective, right? Like, I'm not national, very obviously, right? Like, I talk about the Detroit Tigers every single day, but from a national media perspective, the Miguel Cabrera farewell tour may be the only thing that gets the Tigers national media this year, right? Like, I'm actually wearing my Detroit versus everybody sweatshirt right now, but like, that's this fan base talks all the time about how the national media doesn't really talk about Detroit sports. And there hasn't really been a reason to be fair, in the last 5 years. Like, all 4 teams rather, have been pretty awful over the last 4 or 5 years. And the Lions obviously got into the national media last year, which was great to see. And the only thing that's keeping the Tigers there this year might be Miguel Cabrera. So that's very much a reason to watch from whether, even if you're not a fan of the Tigers, I guess is my point. There's going to be some eyes on the Tigers on games that Miguel Cabrera plays, just because it's the final season of a bona fide first ballot Hall of Famer. All right. We got a few more to go over, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the Rays game. Just a little, not like a full preview, but a little. All right. We'll get into that right after this. All right, everybody. Welcome back here. Third and final segment, Locked On Tigers. Matt Manning we're just jumping right back into it. We got a lot to go over still. I don't want this to be an hour-long episode. Matt Manning. This is, for me personally, there's an argument that this is my biggest story of the season. I think this is a vital season for Matt Manning. It is comfortably the most important year of his career. I think he has the chance to do a lot. And by a lot, I mean a lot of different outcomes can stem from this season for him. He could pitch really well and catapult himself into the conversation of being a middle of the rotation, even like as high as a number 2, if he reaches the ceiling that, was once bestowed upon him as a minor leaguer in this rotation going forward. He could cement himself into that conversation. He could also pitch his way right out of it. And we could be looking at the end of the season and go, you know what? This was the 3rd major league season already that Matt Manning has pitched in and didn't move us, really. And so we're having a totally different conversation about what to do and where to go with Matt Manning after 2023. And everything in between is very much on the table, too. He could just have a really solid season that, maybe he doesn't develop that 3rd pitch, but the fastball is still really good. And we're just kind of looking around and going, okay, he could be a 4 or 5 on a good team. Sure. There's a lot of variance in possible outcomes for Matt Manning. And just given the pedigree that was once bestowed upon him, like I said, I feel like he's comfortably one of the biggest storylines to watch this year. Okay. Nick Maton and Matt Vierling, 2 guys that the fan base was sold on the fact that they weren't, even though they weren't super young prospects, they just had never gotten a chance to play every day because they were on a World Series roster, a World Series caliber lineup. Well, now they're not, very much not, and they will get every opportunity to play. And they very much kind of similar, you're going to see at the end, I'll kind of summarize. This is a very similar conversation for a lot of people for a reason. But Maton, if he can prove that he can hit non-fastballs, he could play his way into being a really solid everyday Major League Baseball player. And Matt Vierling, if he, utilizes just his insane athleticism to its fullest potential in Comerica Park, which is very possible, and or hits righties a lot better, you're talking about another guy who could turn into a really solid everyday Major League Baseball player for this ball club. And I very important. Again, like this is you're gonna see again when I recap everything, you'll see kind of what I'm talking about. But play their way onto the future plans and both solidify themselves as everyday ball players. That would be a massive win. Erod, this is an opt-out season for Erod. Least we forget, right? If he pitches really well, what kind of conversation are we having at the trade deadline? I still think it makes all the sense in the world to trade him. I think value-wise, it makes sense for him to opt out if he even just has a normal, healthy Erod season that he put up for most of his career before coming to Detroit. I think he's going to opt out. Now, the only thing is he's made some comments about how he appreciated how the Tigers handled his last season and whatnot. And I'm not thinking about the opt-out, whatever. That might just be player speak because he doesn't want to talk about it and whatnot. That could be. I don't know the guy. But the only way I think it makes no sense to trade him, or it doesn't make sense to trade him, is if you get like 100% confirmation that he's not opting out. If you have anything short of certainty that he's not opting out and he is healthy and pitching at a normal Erod level, I think he's traded this season. So that's going to be a story to watch. Bounce back candidates across the board, the 3 biggest ones, Javi Baez, Austin Meadows, Jonathan Scope. All 3 have a lot to prove this year to this fan base especially, but also, again, this front office. And 2 of the 3 need to, honestly, in order to reconsider themselves as like pillars and building blocks for this team like we all assumed they were 365 days ago. Right? A year ago at this time, we were talking about Javi and Meadows being like key pieces to this team going forward. Jonathan Scope, I don't think is making it through the season this year, no matter what he does. And if he does well, it's going to be a trade. If he doesn't do well, it's going to be a DFA. But Javi and Meadows, Again, you're talking about a lot of variants. Need to re-solidify themselves as actual pillars for this team going forward. The youth movement, very fun reason to watch. Not going to be as much early on. Well, I mean, Riley Green and Spencer Torkelson, but like the youth movement that either isn't starting off in the majors or like is still really young. Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter, Akil Baddoo, Joey Wentz, Ryan Kreidler, Colt Keith, Justin Henry Malloy. The list goes on and on. I'm sure I'm forgetting some names, but they all have a chance to play well enough to earn more playing time, not only organizationally, but at the major league level. And there, Kerry Carpenter just last year did it, right? Kerry Carpenter was on no one's radar a year ago today. We weren't even talking about him in top prospect conversations. Now he's on the opening day roster. He hit decently well in his major league stint in the last month and a half of last year. And people are talking about, what does he need to do to kind of solidify himself as part of the future plans of this team? A lot of players could be this year's Kerry Carpenter is my point. Okay. The bullpen, I'd say the bullpen is honestly the only area of this team that you can confidently say got worse from last year. The offense, I think, is going to be better. The defense, I think, is going to be better. The starting pitching, I think, is better. The bullpen is the only thing that you can point at and be like, that, I think, pretty objectively is worse than last year. And that's really because last year's bullpen was surprisingly really solid, and they had a legitimate four-headed monster at the top in Lang, Fulmer, Chafin, and someone else I'm forgetting right now. Gregory Soto. Oh, yeah. So you had four really, really solid relievers there at the top. And, Jose Cisnero came back and had a low ERA. And like that was a Jason Foley emerged. Like that was a legitimate bullpen. And you traded a lot of them away or didn't re-sign a lot of them. So you have like your arm barn this year, like you have a lot of question marks, which is great for opportunity and is for a nerd who loves roster building. I'm very interested and intrigued in who is going to step up and potentially be the Jason Foley of this year and be the guy that comes in and isn't really on too many people's radar as like a long-term bullpen piece and then plays his way into that conversation. I really like Miguel Diaz, if you're a listener of the show. Starting off the season in the minors, but we'll see. But there's a lot. Mason Engler, Rule 5 pick's going to be in there. Alex Lang, just what heights can Alex Lang reach? So there's going to be so many relievers that pitch this year. Like that's the biggest thing. There's going to be so many relievers that are in this bullpen at certain points throughout the season. So which ones stick and which ones don't? Very much a reason to watch. Third base has all off season. When are we going to get a third baseman? I refuse to believe they're not going to get a third baseman. Nick Maton can kind of play third, maybe. When are they going to get a third baseman? They never did. So that instantly becomes one of the biggest storylines of the year. Nick Maton, as we said earlier, is going to get the job early, but I truly believe a boatload of dudes are going to play third base this season. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, if you told me in October that 7 different guys played third base at some point this season, I would not even flinch and I'd believe you. So the big story is just, is anyone in the organization currently going to take that job and run with it? Right? We can talk about the future plans. It's going to have to be a free agent. It's Colt Keith. Whatever your opinion is of third for the future, that's your opinion of third for the future. Can anyone currently in the organization take the job in 2023? Big question mark, big story to watch. So this year, the theme, as you can tell, if you've been trying to connect the dots, this is like the year of the audition. Okay? You have a new president of baseball ops. You have new optimism for some that come with the addition of Scott Harris, and a lot of new faces in an offseason where a lot of players got shown the door, right? And got the boot. A lot, right? I think it was M Live said that only 11 players from last year's opening day roster are on this year's. Like, and we've already talked about at length, almost half of the 40-man got axed this offseason. Like, a ton of players got shown the door. And so Does this audition, quote unquote, type of season lead to a lot of winning? Probably not. I think good teams probably know who's going to play every single day at most positions, right? And I'm not trying to sell you that this is going to be a good team. I'm not even trying to sell you that this is going to be an 80-win team, even a 500 ball club, right? But that doesn't mean it's not going to be significantly more watchable than last season. And it also doesn't mean that they won't win quite a lot more, right? I mean, I almost have them at a 10-win improvement. I have them at an 8-win improvement. Okay. And you can also have more entertaining losses. You know how many times we lost 10-0? How many times did Cody Clemens pitch last year? Dang it. Right? Like you can have a much more competitive brand of baseball this season. And where this team is at can actually lead to a lot of competitive battles and fun competitions throughout the season. Like for me, again, as I said earlier, like I'm a nerd who loves the building of a roster and the management of baseball. This has the potential to be a rather entertaining product. And who knows, like maybe go on a couple of heaters. Maybe like in June, they find a hot streak, or, in August, like post trade deadline, they catch fire a little bit. This is the year of the audition, not only for Scott Harris, but for these players, it's an audition to the entire city of Detroit and all of this fans of this beautiful baseball club. I couldn't decide if I want to say team or club. It truly is an audition. Everybody, right? You have the top prospects who weren't as good as we thought. You had the new trade acquisitions and free agent signings who weren't as good as we thought. You had the players who were already here who weren't as good as we thought. And you have a boatload of injuries that are chomping at the bit to reprove themselves. Everybody, 26 players are on this opening day roster, and 26 players are auditioning for trust from fans and trust in management, trust in AJ Hinch, and trust in Scott Harris. And that is what this season is going to be all about. And I cannot wait to go through it with you. I'm so pumped, baby. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast. And next, win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Pacoda currently has this team losing 97 games. I think that's preposterous. Genuinely. Like, you can call me a homer. That's fine. I don't really care. That's insane. I don't know how you look at this team and look at last year and go, yeah, this team's worse. Yeah, not about it. We'll see. 74 wins. I have them at 4th place in the division. I'm pumped. I'm excited. Happy opening day. Should be a national holiday. They're not in Comerica for a little bit, which honestly probably isn't a bad thing given the weather. But about a week, we got to wait till the home opener. Starting rotation. Oh, well, quick news and notes. The Tigers did make a trade. We'll talk about that later. It's not. I don't think it's like an immediate thing. I wanted to do like a true season preview here. So we will talk about the trade that the Tigers made. And we will also, Ronnie Garcia cleared waivers to make room on the 40-man roster for Chasen Shreve and Trey Wingenter, both officially make the roster. Holton does not make the roster. He's getting optioned. Garrett Hill does make the roster. Bo Brisky starting off the season on the IL seems very likely. Boom. Speed round news and notes. Okay. That's now for real. That's all I got. Thank you for tuning in. We got through another offseason. I appreciate all the support and growth that this show received during the offseason. I really do. I love and appreciate all y'all. Let's go have a fun year, right? Why not us? Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.